Defense attorneys in the trial of Kyle Rittenouse have asked for a mistrial today after it was revealed that prosecutors had withheld high-quality footage central to their case against the 18-year-old. It's just the latest example in a growing body of evidence that shows the American justice system has been corrupted, a corruption that goes all the way up to the highest reaches of the federal government. Friends, it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. So we don't yet, as I speak to you, this could change at any moment, have a verdict in the Kyle Rittenouse trial. What we do have today was a mistrial request. Let me show you what I mean. The prosecution, this is about video evidence, by the way, should be required to explain to the court why they did not copy the footage for the defendant with the same quality as their copy. The idea the state would provide lesser quality footage as a linchpin for their case, and it's the very reason they requested and were granted the provocation instruction in court. The failure to provide the same quality footage in this particular case is intentional and clearly prejudices the defendant. This does seem rather straightforward. If they have very high quality, high resolution footage, we're talking about a man's life here in the balance. The Kyle Rittenouse trial could turn upon this one piece of evidence. Kyle Rittenhouse's whole future could change depending on what people see in this kind of video footage. And the defense is telling us that the prosecution did this intentionally. It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? Let's take a look at the two videos in terms of quality side by side. On the top is the poor quality video provided to the defense. On the bottom is the high quality video the prosecution had. Wouldn't you want to have the much clearer picture? Doesn't that matter? It's not up for discussion that there's a difference, by the way. Prosecutors Binger and Krause, Dumb and Dumber, admit their version of the video was in fact much clearer than what they gave the defense.
This is the same quality as our version, is it?
Yeah. Our version is much clearer.
Yeah.
We'll have to get our...
Someone explain to me what the heck is going on here. Is the justice system in this country just being turned into a joke because there are people that hate Kyle Rittenouse so much that even the most basic rules of procedure here, even the most basic constitutional protections, like your right to remain silent after an arrest and not have that used against you as though it's incriminating in a court. These are some of the issues that have come up here. Could the prosecutors in this case really be that incompetent, or is there something more nefarious going on? Well, let's all understand that when the justice system can be used as a weapon of politics, you have a country that can be pulled apart very easily. This is something that we should all be deeply concerned about. Yes, it's at issue in the Kyle Rittenouse trial. It's also at issue back in D.C., at the top levels of the federal government, in fact, of the Department of Justice itself. Here is from a whistleblower information that you need to know about when it comes to the possible targeting, now the alleged targeting, of parents by the FBI for the crime, quote unquote, of speaking out at meetings with school board members. On October 4th, this is from the whistleblower, 2021, the Attorney General forwarded a memorandum addressing a spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence against school administrators, board members, teachers, and staff. As a result, the Counterterrorism and Criminal Division created a threat tag, EDU officials, to track instances of related threats. The purpose of the threat tag is to help scope this threat on a national level and provide an opportunity for comprehensive analysis of the threat picture for effective engagement with law enforcement partners at all levels. What the heck is going on here? A threat tag? I used to work in the CIA in the Counterterrorism Center, actually, and know about intelligence collection and intelligence priorities. When they decide that they're looking at a target, there's a reason for it. But we were told this wasn't happening. In fact, just a few weeks ago, the Attorney General of the United States told the American people under oath up on Capitol Hill that he couldn't even imagine such a thing as parents being targeted with counterterrorism surveillance tools by the federal government because they want to speak out at parent-teacher, or rather school board meetings. This is what he said on October 21st.
Does that seem like an act of domestic terrorism that you or your Justice Department ought to be investigating?
Absolutely not, and I want to be clear. The Justice Department supports and defends the First Amendment right of parents to complain as vociferously as they wish about the education of their children, about the curriculum taught in the schools. That is not what the memorandum is about at all, nor does it use the words domestic terrorism or Patriot Act. Like you, I can't imagine any circumstance in which the Patriot Act would be used in the circumstances of parents complaining about their children, nor can I imagine a circumstance where they would be labeled as domestic terrorism.
I mean, is that true? Because it doesn't seem that way. We have a whistleblower now. Also raises another question. Shouldn't the Attorney General know if that's true? I mean, is it really going to be an ignorance is the defense situation here? Here's Representative Dan Bishop, who's pointing out that it shouldn't have to come from a whistleblower than the FBI. The Attorney General himself should know and should have been all over the possibility of the FBI threat tagging parents.
It is the last 24 hours since a whistleblower has brought forth an email from the Counterterrorism Division of the FBI talking about threat tagging incidents where these parents are protesting against school boards. If that does not shock everybody on this committee, you've been in Congress too long. And so here's the other thing. That document that had to come out from a whistleblower was sent on October 20, the day before Attorney General Garland testified before us. That document should have been in our hands when we asked Attorney General Garland questions.
And yet it wasn't. We should ask why. We'll have more on the latest in the trial of Kyle Rittenouse with attorney and co-publisher of Human Events, Will Chamberlain, coming up. I want to tell you about my friends at My Digital Money. The crypto market's hot right now. A lot of people want to get in on the action. But where do you get started? There's all these cryptocurrencies to choose from. You've heard of Bitcoin, Ethereum. There are dozens of other ones out there. So how do you begin? That's why you need My Digital Money. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with top-tier customer service. I mean, they'll actually answer your phone call and help you get started. Plus, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins. Crypto market is on the upswing. This could be a great time to get into this exciting technology-based investment. You need a team of dedicated professionals who have your back. That's what you'll get with My Digital Money. Go to mydigitalmoney.com. Again, that's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. Fearing violence, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers sent the National Guard into Kenosha in advance of the jury verdict in the Kyle Rittenouse case, while tensions continue to build outside the courthouse as deliberations enter their second day. The jury of 7 women and 5 men deliberated for roughly 8 hours on Tuesday without reaching a verdict. Will Chamberlain, co-publisher at Human Events, joins me now with all the legal perspective we need at this moment in time. Will, appreciate you being back.
Absolutely great to be with you, Buck.
Let's start with this point. Rittenhouse's legal team accused prosecutors of holding back key video footage that's at the heart of their case in a formal motion for a mistrial. According to the New York Post, they accused prosecutors of holding back the high-resolution drone footage used to try to suggest that Rittenhouse had been the aggressor when he claimed self-defense before the first shooting. Prosecutors gave the defense a hard-to-see low-res version in a 3.6 megabyte file, less than a third of the high-res file they actually had. They only got the better quality clip already used by prosecutors on Saturday after testimony had concluded. That seems pretty darn shady to folks just reading about it. What's going on, Will?
Yeah, basically what they said, there was some discussion about that today in open court. Prosecutors tried to claim that somehow it was the problem was with the defendant's phones or the defendant's lawyer's phones. But somebody on the defendant's team pointed out that literally the file names between the two files, between the one provided to the defense and the higher resolution one used by the prosecution, they had different file names, different metadata. They were created at different times, and they were different sizes. The files themselves are different sizes. So it's extremely shady, especially given that this seems to go to the core this particular video goes to the core of the prosecution's theory of provocation, the idea that somehow Kyle Rittenouse may have showed his gun at somebody in the crowd and thus provoked Joseph Rosenbaum to attack him, which, if true, would kind of constrain the extent to which he could claim self-defense. He'd have to fully retreat, etc. So yeah, I think in fact this is extremely mistrial worthy. It's the kind of thing where it's a Brady violation. The defense is entitled to any exculpatory evidence. It's certainly not entitled to making sure that they're not having evidence hidden from them. And it's basically not curable because jury's already in deliberations by the time the mistake was revealed. It was after evidence had closed.
What do you make of? I understand that if you're not in that jury room, you can't know. But give us some of the conventional legal wisdom, such as it is, about. Well, actually, no, there is no convention. Every case is its own thing, right? So based on what you've seen here, and then adding that to the conventional wisdom about jury timelines, I mean, what are you thinking right now as we go late into the second day, at least, of no verdict?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in a normal criminal trial, usually fast verdicts are bad for the defense, and the jury taking a lot of time is good for the defense, because I think there isn't something like a quick and easy way to find someone not guilty. Here, though, it seems like the quickest and easiest way to resolve what are 5 different counts with different activities would be a simple self-defense finding, right? So basically, I was predicting a pretty quick acquittal, because that's the simplest way out of this case is to simply find that Kyle Rittenouse acted in self-defense, and that finding would lead to an acquittal on all charges. But that's not what's happened. So there's sort of 2 potential outcomes here. Either there's sort of a consensus against self-defense, and the jurors are kind of working through the remainder of the charges to see what they're going to find him guilty on. That's one possibility. Or we have holdouts, where there's some jurors. There is a broad, there may be, a majority of jurors who want to acquit, or just a solid contingent of jurors who are committed to voting for an acquittal. But there are jurors who are holding out. And so this is, all this fighting over video footage and requests to see more evidence is just the jurors are currently in the middle of arguing with each other and trying to get more ammunition in that argument in the jury room. But it's hard to know which is the right answer. I mean, I've seen reporting indicating that the holdouts is what's happening. That's perfectly plausible to me, but it's hard. We don't know. We're not there.
Right, we're not in that room, and we don't get any real insight into it until we see what the jury foreman comes out and says. Right, but at least we don't get any answers, I should say, until we get the final answer here on it. And to that end, though, about the prosecutor's will in this case, there's talk about mistrial, a variety of mistrial motion possibilities that are out there. The judge said he hadn't even moved yet until he heard from the state today about the mistrial. Take us through what's the reality of the mistrial situation?
Well, I mean, we have a motion from the defense for a mistrial with prejudice that was filed on the 15th, so 2 days ago. And then today in court, we had a verbal motion for a mistrial without prejudice. Basically, that would mean that Kyle could be tried again, that the prosecutors could bring the case again. Now, whether a mistrial will be granted, I mean, there's a reasonable chance of a mistrial with prejudice being granted because of some misbehavior by the prosecution earlier on last week. First, the allusion to defendant having remained silent, which would, alluding to that and sort of casting any sort of negative aspersion on it would be a Fifth Amendment violation. Because, I mean, if you have the right to remain silent, that right's not protected if the prosecutors can get up and use it against you.
Right.
And then the second thing was there was a piece of evidence that was ruled to be excluded that the prosecutors also alluded to in their examination of Kyle. That is now also being used as separate grounds for a mistrial with prejudice. Basically, the defense attorneys are arguing that's an intentional thing that the prosecutors did. They're acting in bad faith, bringing up evidence that had been excluded by the judge. And then you add to that this video footage issue. So all those issues, I think, really are genuinely issues, all 3 of which independently could have led to a mistrial with prejudice. So combined, I wouldn't be surprised to see that granted. But I think what's happening is that the judge is sort of hoping for an acquittal to kind of relieve him of the need to do any of that. Like I think the judge would prefer not to have to make what would be a pretty dramatic decision.
Could he, the judge, set aside a guilty verdict and grant a mistrial anyway? Isn't that in the judge's authority?
Yes, that is within the judge's authority. Now that decision
That would
I'm not
obviously be a
certain
pretty
about-
big, that'd be a pretty big
That
move.
would be a
but-
very big decision, right? That's a very, that's a bold step for the judge to take. So he'd have to take the whatever public relations problems that came with that. There's also that decision is one of the few that can be appealed by the prosecution, right? A prosecution can't appeal a not guilty verdict. That's the end of the case. But the prosecution can certainly appeal a mistrial declaration over any sort of judge rejection of a jury verdict. Because the judge has to do that as a matter of law, and that can be evaluated on appeal.
Just want to get your take on something before we let you get back to following the trial and writing about it, Will. Nicholas Sandman, the so-called Covington kid who catapulted in the national conversation after an encounter with a Native American activist at the 2019 March for Life, has publicly come to the defense of Kyle Rittenouse. Here's a piece from the op-ed he wrote for the Daily Mail. He wrote, "Should Kyle sue? It first depends on what happens in the trial, as those elements would come into play were he found guilty. However, if Kyle's innocent, create an easier road to winning. Kyle's prepared to take on another burden early in his life here with the acceptance it might result in nothing. Give it a shot. Hold the media accountable." You think if Rittenouse is found not guilty, does he have a shot at a defamation suit against any of the characters involved here?
I think a defamation suit would be really challenging. I mean, even if he's acquitted, it doesn't change the fact that he was charged with murder, which when you're talking about defamation, like by the time that most of these statements were made, Kyle would have been a public figure, not of his own choosing, but it's not the statements that made him a public figure, right? It would have been the fact that, his essentially the incident blew up on social media and so made him effectively a public figure for these purposes. And then you have to, if Kyle's treated as a public figure in a defamation case, you have to prove actual malice on the part of the people who defamed him. And proving that's really challenging. That means you prove they knowingly lied about the things they said about him. I mean, there's going to be a lot of this stuff is like negligence and rumor that went around. That's one part of it. And then the second part of it is like he was charged with murder. So, there's like that's kind of
it's uphill, which even Sandman said there. But hey, Will, appreciate the expertise, man. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Buck.
Former co-host of The View, JEDEDIAH Bila, got into a heated exchange with her former colleagues yesterday over her personal decision not to take the COVID-19 vaccine and her opposition to COVID vaccine mandates. JEDEDIAH joins us to talk about that in her new book, Dear Hartley, when we come back. You have homeowners insurance for good reason, because without it, a fire, flood, or burglary could destroy you financially. But there's another major crime your homeowner's policy doesn't cover. It's called home title fraud. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, and it can ruin you financially, which is why you need Home Title Lock. Title fraud happens when a criminal forges your signature on documents stating you sold your home to him. Then he takes out loans against your home and leaves you with the payments. You'll spend a fortune in legal fees trying to prove you didn't commit fraud. Home Title Lock puts a barrier around your home's title. The instant they detect anyone from a cyber thief to a renter to a relative trying to forge their way onto your home's title, they help shut it down. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim. Enter code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. That's code RADIO at HomeTitleLock.com. JEDEDIAH Bila stops by in a moment.
My point about all of this is that I am not anti-vax. What I really want is for people to make these decisions for themselves. I want every one of you to sit with your family members, to sit with your trusted doctors, and to say, what is the best decision for me? But the vaccine does not prevent you from getting COVID and does not prevent you from transmitting COVID.
Oh, my goodness. We've had the United States Surgeon General debunk.
Yes, I heard what he said.
Everything that you've just said. And I just don't think we should
so when you
allow
have the
this
Surgeon
kind of
General
misinformation on our air. I'm really sorry,
Sunny,
my friend.
first of all,
I'm really sorry,
Sunny,
my friend.
first of all, I would say to you as a friend, what I just said to you is I am prioritizing my health. And people talk about the common
over
good.
the health and safety
You're not going to have a common good if you're.
Yeah, that was the panel at The View who had JEDEDIAH Bila on to talk about her new book, Dear Hartley. Instead, of course, they just ambushed her and shouted her down over her vaccination status. Many medical professionals have said natural immunity should be a legitimate form of immunization. And that's pretty obvious, isn't it? You can see the far left doesn't want to hear it. Author of Dear Hartley, Thoughts on Character, Kindness, and Building a Brighter World, JEDEDIAH Bila, my friend, with us now. JEDEDIAH, I know you've been somebody who spent plenty of time already with the ladies of The View, but it was pretty remarkable because everything you said was true, actually. I mean, demonstrably, provably true, and they think the Surgeon General refuted you? Why can't they let you speak?
Well, that's right. It was true. And if you watch the clip that when they had the Surgeon General on, because I did watch it because I anticipated they would say that, he didn't debunk any of that stuff. He didn't say, oh, what the CDC is saying is false. No, they can't say that because, in fact, it's true. You see hundreds of thousands of breakthrough infections coming up around the country in vaccinated people. It's pretty obvious to everyone, including the CDC and including the Surgeon General, that if you're vaccinated, you can still get COVID and you can still transmit COVID. That's why they brought the masks back in for vaccinated people, because it was obvious that something, oh, wait a minute, we didn't realize, all of that happened. What the Surgeon General actually said on that show was, we don't know the exact number of that antibody count that qualifies as natural immunity, so we just shouldn't use that. That should be discounted, essentially, is what he was saying. And I would have asked him, had I been on that panel, well, do you know the exact numerical value of antibodies that constitutes acceptable immunity for the vaccinated? Because it's really interesting. I've spent the better part of a year looking at my antibodies and watching those numbers and looking at family member who got tested and watching their antibodies, and it's some pretty interesting conclusions. So that's
I would just want to know how long, JEDEDIAH, there's any efficacy for these vaccines. I mean, what's the actual number? Because my understanding is that they don't know. They kind of guess that you need a booster after 6 months, 4 months, depends.
That's right. Now, Fauci's coming out and saying, oh, we didn't realize that the vaccine was going to wane so much in terms of immunity. So now people are going to have to, we realize more people are in the hospital and more people are dying. So you're going to have to go out and get your booster. Listen, people have to ask themselves, is that what you want to sign up for? Is that if it is, if you are comfortable, and this is my message, Buck, if you are comfortable with that, boosters every 6 months, that's fine by me. Go do whatever you want. That is up to you. That is your decision to make, your family, your body, your doctor. That's fine. But I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that because I don't need to do that, because I have provable immunity via an infectious disease specialist in New York City who is himself vaccinated. He's not anti-vax, backed up by 3 additional doctors. I have a medical exemption. There's more risk to me to take this vaccine. I am not going to put someone else at risk. So I'm tired. I'm tired of being told what to do. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are just tired. And this whole idea of the common good, I just want to address that for a second, because that's something that people on the left throw around all the time, the common good. So listen, if you don't take care of yourself as an individual, there is no common good, because you are part of that scenario. You're not supposed to sacrifice your own well-being. Oh, okay, I'm not going to listen to what my doctor said. I'm going to put myself at significant risk for the common good. What good does that do anyone? I'm a mom, I have a son, I have a child, I have a family. That doesn't help anyone, and that should not be a prescription for success for an individual or for a country. So that's utterly ridiculous. I think it's really interesting that a lot of these people have been offended by the idea of freedom. Me saying that I want you to make that decision for yourself bothers them. It really gets under their skin. They would rather have government make that decision. They'd rather have a corporate bureaucrat make that decision. Listen, if they want to live in a world like that, hey, they can come to New York City. They can live, under the likes of Bill de Blasio. That's great for them. I'm not living like that, which is why I'm heading to the great state of Texas. But more power to them if that's the life they want. Just don't try to inflict that kind of life on me or my child.
JEDEDIAH, last week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit fully blocked Biden's executive order requiring companies with over 100 workers to mandate vaccination for their employees. National Review wrote it up as follows. The OSHA website page dedicated to the COVID vaccine emergency temporary standard reads, while OSHA remains confident in its authority to protect workers in emergencies, they have suspended activities related to the implementation and enforcement of the ETS pending future developments in litigation. So, federal court saying that this is unconstitutional. Maybe we should take a step back.
That's what common sense would dictate, that, to take a step back. And businesses should not follow this. They should not pay any attention to this. Once again, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, people just have to think. And I know it's always, oh, well, how do we protect our, liability? And are we going to just think for a second? Stop firing nurses and doctors who have this provable natural immunity, who were, by the way, working in the trenches, getting exposed to COVID, getting sick and recovering, when many of us, myself included, had the luxury of sitting home and being afraid, which I stayed in for far too long, that fear, frankly. But stop firing these workers and just use your head. If you have a bunch of vaccinated people, they can still get the infection and spread it. What are you accomplishing by putting a mandate through? Are you trying to create two classes in a society? Are you trying to promote active discrimination in the community that's completely not founded on science? It's completely unethical. So people need to stand up and say, I am not going to tolerate this. And I know it's hard. I have an incredible amount of empathy for people who are saying, what do I do here? I have to choose between my health and putting food on the table for my family. I understand that. I just want to express to people that tyranny loves this. They love when they put you in a position like this. And if they succeed, they're not going to back down. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. So if this doesn't affect you today, maybe it will tomorrow. Maybe it doesn't affect you, but it affects your children. And if this doesn't bother you, just wait, because a lot of these bloodthirsty politicians, and I mean that because they don't care. This is not about health. A lot of them are saying to themselves, you know what? We got away with this in places like California and New York. What can we do next? And no one's going to want to see what that looks like.
JEDEDIAH, switching gears for a second, your new book, Dear Hartley, yes. Thoughts on Character, Kindness, and Building a Brighter World. Those are all good things. I like that. That book is out now. What do you want people to take from the book, and why should folks pick up a copy? Other than the fact that you're great and we all like you here a lot. But go ahead, tell us.
And my son has the best smile ever.
And
so
he is very cute. Yes.
This is a book about freedom. This is a book about holding on to the values that we treasure so much. There's chapters about the American dream and opportunity and following your gut and being unafraid to go into rooms full of people that disagree with you and speaking your mind. There's a chapter called You, the Architect, where I say you need to be the architect of your own life. You need to decide what you want that to look like. Now, we see that unfolding with mandates. I want my child to make decisions for himself. I don't want his boss. I don't want some corporate entity. I don't want the government stepping in and saying, you need to do this all the time. I want him to be able to say, you know what? This is my body. These are very personal decisions. I want to be able to make those decisions for myself. So this is really about getting back to those values that we treasure so much and preserving them, not just for our kids, but for the whole next generation. And it's not just for parents. It's for teachers. It's for everyone who cares about what's happening in the world and wants to put a full stop on this and say, hold on a second. These are my kids. It's for teachers who are being told to sit down and shut up in boardrooms around the country. It's for everyone who's just tired of all that and wants to give their children the voice and power to be their own person, their own free thinking person in a world where that's increasingly less tolerated.
JEDEDIAH Bila is the author. Dear Hartley is the book. Go pick up a copy. JEDEDIAH, always so good to see you. Thanks for coming to hang out with us today.
Thank you, Buck. I appreciate it.
Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was on Capitol Hill to answer questions about the administration's failure to secure the southern border. It's putting it mildly. We'll dissect Mayorkas' testimony with resident fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, Art Arthur, when we come back. I want to tell you one more time about my friends at My Digital Money. Seems like everyone wants to invest in crypto these days, Bitcoin, Ethereum, so many digital tokens. But how do you get started? That's where My Digital Money comes in. It's an easy-to-use, self-trading crypto IRA platform with concierge-level customer service. It's one of the few U.S.-based crypto companies that will answer your phone call and help you get started. Because your comfort and security is their top priority, they offer an unparalleled military-grade security for your coins, trigger orders to help you secure opportunities. Look, this is where you should get started with your crypto investment journey. You need a team of dedicated professionals who have your back and speak to you honestly. That's what you'll get with My Digital Money. Go to mydigitalmoney.com. Again, that's mydigitalmoney.com. We'll be right back.
Who do you think is more deserving of cash payments from the United States government? Illegal migrants who cross our borders or the family of U.S. soldiers who are killed in action?
Senator, I think if I may, you know how I'll answer that question. I think that the families of those who lost their lives wearing our nation's uniform.
If we pay millions of dollars to illegal immigrants, in your professional judgment, will we get more illegal immigration or less illegal immigration?
I do not think a mother would travel to the United States in the hands of traffickers so that she can be separated from her 7-year-old daughter for a period of time, the duration of which she has.
Can you answer the question? Those were two yes and no questions.
I do not think that it would be a pull factor.
Republican lawmakers grilling DHS Secretary Mayorkas yesterday on whether potential settlement payments of up to $450,000 to migrant families separated at the border would encourage more illegal crossings. Joining me now to discuss, resident fellow in law and policy for the Center for Immigration Studies, Art Arthur. Art, good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
First off, it is remarkable to see some of what Mayorkas said. I mean, he at one point even said that he would give this administration and himself as DHS chief an A for effort in their border endeavors, and even said that he thinks the Biden policies are working. What is he talking about?
Yeah, it actually got even stranger than that, because when he was directly asked the question of whether there's more control at the border now than there was under Trump, he stated that there was more control consistent with the values of our nation. Now, Buck, I have no idea what that means, because 1.659 million plus illegal migrants were apprehended at the southwest border in FY 2021. That's the highest ever in American history, and that's really saying something. So Secretary Mayorkas' testimony was strange. He seemed distracted. He seemed like he didn't want to be there, and he was very short with the members from time to time. I was very surprised.
128% increase we can show here. You mentioned the numbers, so let's dive into that. In border crossings, October 21 versus October of 2020. Now, granted, October of 2020 was a pandemic year, but it's still a pandemic year. I think people have forgotten this. We were told, oh, well, it's artificial to say that there was a shutdown during the pandemic. There's still a pandemic going on. We still have all kinds of restrictions in place, but we've had this enormous increase in border crossings. What has led to it? Why are we going through this?
Yeah, and we don't even need to compare last month to the October before. There were more apprehensions of illegal migrants at the southwest border in October 2021 than in any October in history. Records for that go back to 2000, back to October of 1999 to be exact. That was before September 11th. That was before we beefed up the border, put more Border Patrol agents down there, and erected about 700 miles of fencing. Now, when you get in a situation where you have more people coming to the United States today than you had before September 11th, that's a problem. And the reason they're coming is simple, because they believe that the welcome mat has been put out by the Biden administration. It was very clear in the questioning by the Republican senators yesterday. They believe that's true. They referred to the failed Biden policies and the rhetoric of the Biden administration. In fact, President Biden was a little flippant back in March. He was like, oh, they're coming because I'm a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. That was at the same time that he said it's the usual surge that we see every year. At this point, Buck, he knows it's not the usual surge. And yet Secretary Mayorkas doesn't have any answer whatsoever on how to stop the surge of illegal migrants at the southwest border.
Here is Senator Ted Cruz at that Judiciary Committee hearing yesterday when he was talking to, grilling really, Mayorkas of the DHS on why haven't the president, the vice president visited the cages, the facilities for detention. Here's what he said.
In the past year, has Joe Biden been down to see firsthand the Biden cages?
Senator, I will again.
Has Joe Biden been down to see this facility? Yes or no?
The president has not been down to the...
Okay, no. Has Kamala Harris been down to see the Biden cages, this facility? Yes or no?
The vice president was at the border.
Has she been down to see this facility? I know she went to El Paso. Has she seen the Biden cages?
They are not cages. And
what are these walls?
Senator,
has Kamala Harris seen them? Yes or no?
Senator,
it's a simple question. Yes or no? We don't need a paragraph. Yes or no? Has Kamala Harris been down to see these detention facilities?
She has not been down.
Seems strange, doesn't it? Why wouldn't the so-called border czar, I know Mayorkas says she's not the border czar, or at least not anymore, but why wouldn't either the president or the vice president go to see the very facilities that we were told under the Trump administration were akin to concentration camps? That's what I remember some of the members of Congress were saying.
Yeah, and the cages that Senator Cruz referenced go back to the Trump administration when they were referred to as cages by Democrats at that time. And it's plain why they haven't gone down there, because the pictures are bad, because the situation is bad. Even worse, I don't know that either the president or the vice president has been to any of the HHS facilities. We haven't seen any pictures from inside of those. But we also know that we've received almost twice as many unaccompanied alien children in 2021 as we have in any other year in history. So we have massive numbers of children coming to the border unaccompanied. They're handed over to HHS. They're placed in facilities, and yet we don't see the inside of those, and we don't see the president, the vice president going to those facilities either.
Senator Tom Cotton also had quite a fiery exchange. It was quite a day up on Capitol Hill for the DHS chief. Here's what he wanted to know from Mayorkas.
We have had 1.3 million by your own admission cross just this year. There are millions more in this country who are here illegally. I'm simply asking you, what is more important? What's a higher priority of the United States government, to protect our border or to give amnesty to those who are here illegally?
Senator, we do not have the authority nor the intention to give amnesty.
You testified that you wanted it, though, in your opening statement.
No,
a pathway to citizenship, legal status, whatever you want to call it, any kind of adjustment. What's more important, securing our border or giving some kind of adjustment to the legal status of those illegal aliens present in the country today?
Senator, I consider those to be both very significant priorities.
I think we get a sense which one's more significant from what the numbers are telling us right now, Art.
Yeah, and there was actually a very interesting exchange with Senator Grassley when he was asking him about removing the 1.2 million illegal aliens who are under final orders of removal. We're not talking about people who are waiting for asylum hearings. These are people who have had their day in court. And Secretary Mayorkas interestingly stated that he wouldn't necessarily say that those individuals had received due process. So what is he going to do? Try them all over again under the new Mayorkas standard? He's not interested in enforcing the law in the interior of the United States. He's not interested in enforcing the law at the border. He's a failure in his job. And at certain points, members actually said that to him. And he looked like a man who was not up to the job yesterday.
Art, appreciate you joining us here today, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Buck.
Coming up, a gender therapist explains that when a 1-year-old girl pulls bows out of her hair, she's trying to send a message that she is trans. Normally we'd call that a temper tantrum, not a gender crisis. We'll get into that in quick hits. But first, you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to do it on your own? And you didn't want to make big rookie mistakes, cost you a lot in the early stages, right? Well, that's what I thought until I met my friends at Done For You Real Estate. They took the guesswork out of it for me. They found me an amazing property. They rented it out for me right away. They managed the tenant for me. Now I get a check every month like clockwork. Don't wait another second to see if my buddies at Done For You Real Estate can do for you what they did for me. Visit doneforyoubuck.com to see how it works. Again, every step of the process, picking the city, the house, getting the loan set up, getting a tenant in place, and a management company to handle the whole thing for you. Just go to doneforyoubuck.com to see what my friends can do for you. That's doneforyoubuck.com to begin your real estate investment journey. Quick hits coming up next. Stay with us. Joy Reid compares Kyle Rittenhouse's white male tears to Brett Kavanaugh, and a new study found more than 50% of vaccinated people are banning unvaxxed family members from holiday gatherings. Welcome to Joe Biden's America, everybody. It's time for quick hits. Let's just start with this one. This is really depressing because, especially for those who have either already had the virus or are not at a high risk factor in terms of their age, banning a relative from a family gathering for vax status, what's wrong with everybody? But a lot of people are doing it. 60% of vax, this is a study here by Newsmax, 60% of vax individuals are banning unvaxxed family members from seasonal festivities. 63% of the vax are not comfortable having unvaxxed relatives at their parties. 49% of the unvaxxed are no longer communicating with family members who won't understand their hesitancy and unwillingness to get the shot. 22% of the unvaxxed have already been banned from family gatherings. So, my friends, this is what happens when Fauciism burrows deeply into the brains of people who are incapable or unwilling to think for themselves. It's very sad. The chances of, first of all, anybody getting COVID and being hospitalized or dying from it is small. And the fact is, if you are vaccinated against this, why are you so worried about an unvaxxed family member? Because you can still transmit the virus even if you are vaccinated. So you're really, the only risk here, the only risk factor is death and hospitalization. And if you're vaccinated, you should be, that's what they tell us, at very low risk of that. It's sad. It's crazy. But if we're talking about crazy, we can also discuss Joy Reid over at MSNBC, who is completely out of her mind and says really vicious, nasty, and stupid things on a regular basis. That seems to be her brand. Here she is comparing Kyle Rittenouse to Brett Kavanaugh. Why? They're both white guys that she does not like.
So it's Kyle Rittenouse trial. It reminded a lot of people of something, I just can't remember what it was. Oh, the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, in which Brett Kavanaugh, who had been accused by a high school friend of committing sexual abuse of her, cried his way through the hearings to make him a permanent member and Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. In America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears. Really white tears in general, because that's what Karens are, right? They Karen out, and then as soon as they get caught, it's like, green waterworks.
This woman's a racist and a moron. What else can you say about it? I mean, the fact that MSNBC puts her on television is, I would say, shows you everything you need to about the kind of decision-making that goes on over there. But what exactly does Brett Kavanaugh have to do? Oh, they're both white guys. One of them was, unless you're a lunatic, which she clearly is, clearly innocent of any sexual assault claims made against him by crazy leftists who wanted to take him down. And yeah, being called a rapist in front of the entire country and your own family when you've done nothing of the thing will get some people upset. And a guy who had to defend himself from 3 people, including a convicted child rapist, by the way, attacking him on the streets, using a weapon to defend himself, that's also an emotional thing. But she is horrifying. Then there's this gender therapist explaining that baby girls pulling bows out of their hair and baby boys opening the snaps of their onesie to make a dress are sending a message they are trans.
I have a colleague who's transgender, and there is a video of him as a toddler. So he was assigned female at birth. There's a video of him as a toddler tearing barrettes out of then her hair and throwing them on the ground and sobbing. That's a gender message. And when it happens not just once or twice or 3 times, that's a gender message. There was one where this child wore the little onesies with snap-ups in between the legs, and at age 1 would unsnap them to make a dress and have the dress flow. This was a child who was assigned male. That's a communication, a pre-verbal communication.
Woman's out of her mind. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. Before I go, I want to take a moment to thank you for watching me here on the First TV. Now's the time to support free speech and the conservative voices that fight back. We speak for millions of Americans as cultural elites work behind the scenes to silence your voice. The woke left is on a mission to burn the Constitution and cancel you in the process. That stops now. Your support allows us to bring you the most important conservative voices of our time. As a first supporter, you'll get premium content from hosts you know and love, access TV specials, exclusive emails, and other membership benefits from our hosts. Enjoy weekly specials through our website as well as our apps on Roku, iOS, Android, and Apple TV. Please go to thefirst.com/support or the First TV app and learn how you can join the fight by supporting The First. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly's up next. Shields high.